everyone. Welcome back to Splice and Splatter, the film podcast presented by Cocteau Cinema, where classic horror meets modern gore with your host, Siena, the lovely Siena.
And Al.
Oh,
look at that. We switched. Just to keep you all confused who are listening and haven't yet learned our voices.
You'll never know who's introing who. Keep you on your toes.
How are you doing today, Al?
Doing.
You're doing?
Yeah.
I found out a horror-related tidbit earlier this week that I've been holding on to for
Ooh,
today.
Love a tidbit. Love a tid, love a bit.
Love a tid, love a bit. So I found out this week that the 90s classic The Mask, the Jim Carrey movie,
Oh, we know.
was supposed to be a horror movie. Isn't that fascinating? And like, now I can't stop thinking about it. And
in that lens.
Yeah, well, and like I'm an enormous Jim Carrey fan. This is a story for a different time. He's
Absolutely.
like, such a big fan. But now I'm like, it shocks me that he's never done a horror movie because like there is something so inherently creepy about him.
I guess I think like Butterfly Effect feels like a horror movie because the implications of going back and is that Ashton Kutcher? Is that Jim Carrey?
I don't think that's Jim Carrey.
Ashton Kutcher. Just kidding. Obviously, I bet
that is
everyone gets
horrifying.
them confused.
I think that's very flattering to Jim Carrey to get him mixed up with Ashton
I don't know
Kutcher.
about that.
Anyway, I'm just like, now I can't stop thinking about like, when is somebody going to make a Jim Carrey horror movie?
Oh, he'd be so
good. Especially like current Jim Carrey.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, now that he's like in his meditative painter mode, I feel like
really like into intellectual mindset,
Yes.
creating like a bunch of art.
Yeah, I want to see the Jim Carrey starring psychological horror movie now, right?
Yeah, because I feel like he would have a different layer to it now than he would have had back in the day.
He's got the life has beaten him down enough.
Same.
Yeah.
Speaking of life beating us down.
Yes.
Or
what a great transition that was. I love it.
For those of you who are not watching this podcast, we have various Sams as our little keeping us happy while we talk about life beating us down. You know, little happy Halloween men are scattered around. Siena has the jack-o'-lantern fetus version of Sam, and I have the Sam that we see the most in the movie that we're going to be talking about today. One of the movies we're going to be talking about today. Trick or Treat, which I mentioned in the last episode, and then Siena is covering
Candyman, which is one of my favorite horror movies, maybe my favorite horror movie of all time, and realized as I was watching Trick or Treat last night at 2:30 in the morning that these are both it was great that these are both movies that feature razor blades and candy.
Yes.
So
two of my favorite things. Razor blade, always check your candy.
Candy.
Always
check your candy. As your shirt tells us.
It does. I am also wearing a Sam shirt. I also have Sam lollipop earrings. So I'm
Sammed out
force.
Today.
I am. Yeah. He is a little baby angel.
Yeah.
And just for reference too, Siena, this was your first time last night watching.
It was my first time, so I'm very fresh. My notes are a mess. It's mostly just a lot of, oh no, I was so Rhonda as a kid.
Same.
Yeah. I saw that character come on screen and I was just like, oh my God.
Yeah. Yes, she is me. I am her.
And nothing has changed at all.
So I guess we'll just
dip
us in. We will.
You're our expert. Where do we start with Trick or Treat? Where do we dive in?
So we're just going to go over some of the stuff we talked about for those who didn't listen last time. Trick or Treat is a 2007 slated film that didn't get a release until 2009, and the release was straight to DVD. It was in competition with Saw at the time to come out at 2007, so they pushed it back, put it straight to DVD, and then it didn't even get its wide theatrical release until 2022.
Man.
Which is tragic.
It's insane. Yeah.
Which is why I fought last year, and it was screened at the Cocteau Cinema in Santa Fe, here in Santa Fe.
Of course that was your doing.
Yes.
That 100% tracks.
I love to bully my favorite films onto people. Specifically communities that need to see it. And it was fun.
Yeah.
Everyone loved it. I think it's one of those films that those who love it, we clearly we love it.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of people that still have yet to see it, again, because of that straight to DVD release, which is such a shame. So I love introducing people to Trick or Treat. It's one of my favorite things. I'm so happy that I got you to watch. You got a chance to watch it last night or this morning.
Little column A, little column B.
Yeah. So this was Michael Dougherty. He was the one that wrote and directed it.
An auteur, if you will.
Yes. And so this was his directorial debut.
Interesting.
He would go on to write and direct the 2015 Krampus. So we love.
Oh my God, I love
Yes.
that. That's so funny.
That was him, baby.
I hadn't realized, man.
Yeah.
So he's got a thing for seasonal horror.
Yes.
Interesting.
And then he also did the 2019 Godzilla King of the Monsters.
Oh
so
God,
again,
amazing.
the man loves this genre, loves a monster. And then he also wrote various graphic novels based off of the concept as well. So if you're interested in graphic novels, he has little tales and stories that you find it online.
That's fascinating because a lot of what I was like struck by this first watch was how comic booky it felt, and that like it makes total sense to hear that.
Yeah. So he so the film kind of opens up with that, which we'll get to. The summary kind of the film, if you haven't seen it, is they kind of depict it as an anthology, but kind of as we were discussing, it's not really a true anthology as the stories all are loosely connected. It follows interwoven stories that occur on Halloween night. It follows an everyday high school principal as he has a secret life as a serial killer, a college virgin that might have met her guy for the night, a group of teenagers that pull a mean prank, a woman who loathes the night and has to contend with her holiday-obsessed husband, which is in the beginning, and a mean old man who met his match with a demonic, supernatural trick-or-treater. Yes. Spoiler, it's Sam.
Yes. This is going to be a spoiler-heavy episode.
It'll be, yeah. I'm trying to keep spoilers out of this one. I would encourage people to go watch it first if you really don't want to hear anything too spoilery. It's still worth a watch. It's just really fun and playful, and just as Sam, it has the heart of Halloween at its core.
I had a great time watching it. It was very like the mix of comedy and horror. I knew that it was one of those combination genre movies.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, I had gone in thinking that it was more tilted towards the comedy side, and I was surprised by how much it was tilted towards the horror, which I obviously love that.
Lots of horror,
lots of gore, lots of gore, lots of really good gore too. Good practical effects.
Absolutely. So this film is starring Anna Paquin as Laurie, who's in True Blood, X-Men movies. Brian Cox as Mr. Creed. He was in Succession, Her, The Ring. Dylan Baker as slimy Principal Stephen Wilkins.
I looked up what else he's been in. He, if anybody else has seen it, was the terrifying main character in Todd Solondz's Happiness from 1998.
Oh, that's funny. I don't have that as he was in Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2 and 3.
Oh,
and
so
The Cell.
This is so like the movies that each of us would be drawn to on his list.
I was like, I don't know that one. Yeah. We have Rochelle Aites as Maria. She was in White Chicks and TV shows like The Purge and SWAT. Leslie Bibb as Emma, Midnight Meat Train, Talladega Nights.
Amazing.
And Quinn Lord as Sam, our sweet little baby angel, Sam. He was in Once Upon a Time, Fringe, Smallville, and Masters of Horror. He was around 7 at the time of filming too, which makes it all the more precious. But talking about getting horror, like the love of horror early.
Having it in your blood early.
Yeah.
Wow. I wonder what his life has gone on to be like now that he's
still an actor, I believe, in the landscape. So yeah, nothing notable that I have at least written on here. So
fair.
Google if in your own time.
We all have access to phones.
Find out for me.
Write us. Let us know.
So this film was based on Michael Dougherty's animated short Season's Greetings from 1996. So I don't know if you watched it, but it's this really, really sweet short animation that kind of gives the spirit of Sam. And it centers around Sam, and it's described as a twist on Halloween memories that involves the traumatic theft of a candy bag on Halloween night. The boy who put the trick into trick-or-treating confronts the boogeyman thief. You can watch it on YouTube. It's really, really cute and kind of sets the tone. And it kind of hits that nostalgia of being 96. So the film was originally, like I said, slated to be in 2007, DVD 2009, and then came on the big screen 2022. And it kicks off with opening credits that are essentially a comic strip kind of flipping through, and it kind of plays out the entire film.
Yeah.
Which is kind of fun. It's like, I say no spoilers, but if you
watch
the
credits, intro, this reminded me of, I think it's the opening credits of Midsommar does a similar type of thing with the paintings on the wall.
Oh, yeah. Kind
Or
of
like
in a different aesthetic.
Yeah, different
kind of
aesthetic, but the same idea of like sort of playing out what you're going to see.
Yeah, if you're paying attention to it. So yeah, this film kicks off with really fun credits to watch, which I love. It kind of adds to that, this isn't super serious, like you were saying. We see a drunk couple that's coming home from a party. He wants to get laid and she wants to rip he's like, leave up the Halloween decorations, and she's like, no, being a curmudgeon.
Which, like, also, who takes down their decorations on Halloween night?
Like, can you wait?
Yeah,
kids
wait
are
24
so out.
hours, my dear. Like,
yeah, rude.
The time is gonna come.
And the time does
time
come.
comes.
Sam comes.
Yep.
So some time passes. The husband's upstairs watching some porn, getting ready for his lady to come join him.
Which also surprised and delighted that they actually showed hardcore porn for that.
Oh, yeah.
I was like kind of shocked and like really.
That was the tamest thing, I think, in the entire film.
Honestly, probably true. Yeah.
They're like, we're good.
Yeah.
So some time passes and he goes to find her. He kind of skulks around. You know that she's not alive anymore. And he finds her bloodied with Sam's little lollipop shoved right into her mouth like a little jack-o'-lantern. One of his weapons that he loves to use and us as fans love to see. So it cues the theme music in the opening credits. And we're kind of sets the stage. Yeah, the music is really iconic in this. And again, every Halloween when I hear it come on, it kind of sparks that joy. So we meet up with a group of college girls choosing their Halloween costumes for a party they attend, on the prowl for some dumb dates, dumb men, to bring with them. And Anna Paquin's character, Lori, seems to be more hesitant. She's shy. She's the virgin of the group. And a fun fact about Lori, Anna Paquin's character is that she was named after Laurie Strode from Halloween in 1978. So
love a little horror Easter egg.
Yes.
That's so satisfying when directors do that. I also just loved how, obviously you find out why later, but I wrote down in my notes, love that these women are just on the fucking prowl. From the start.
They're so ready. They're like,
they're
let's
so
look
ready.
I'm saying this in the nicest way possible and with no shamey. The sluttiest outfits. These beautiful, they're like, let's go.
Yeah, I loved it.
And they're like, dates, just do you want to come? They don't care. They just want a dumb boy as arm candy. And I'm like, hell yeah.
It's amazing.
Later in the film, we see a cameo from actor Ernst Harth, who's actually, speaking of dates, is Laurie's blind date.
Oh, yeah.
He's a man dressed as a giant baby later on in the scene. And he was the actor in 13 Ghosts from 2001. And he actually played a ghost called The Great Child, who was also a giant baby. So it was kind of a nod to his character.
I love that. So many layers of reference in there.
Yeah, they had a lot of fun with it. So then the next scene, we kind of meet a kid named Charlie, who's kind of this little like blonde, curly haired, snot-nosed kid. He's knocking over pumpkins. He's stealing the candy from people's doorsteps.
He's a bad boy.
Like a little brat.
Yeah.
Like a little brat. So he ends up on the doorstep of Principal Wilkins, played by Dylan Baker, whose character is actually inspired by Norman Bates from Psycho.
I did not know that.
Yeah, I kind of like mixed it in. I think that was just his choice, which love Norman Bates.
Yeah, that's like, I didn't put it on my list for last week's episode because it's like too obvious, but Psycho was like the movie that started me with horror because I watched it and immediately developed such an enormous crush on Norman Bates that I was like,
he's so crush-worthy.
He's so gorgeous.
Fun fact, had a foster dog for a year. He didn't have a name, found on the streets of LA, named him Norman Bates. Loved to watch me take a shower.
Incredible.
Snaggletooth and all.
Is that why you named him Norman Bates?
He lived up to the name, which is
stepped into the shoes.
Yeah.
Love it.
He was like, oh, this?
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. Heard chef.
Yes, chef.
Yes, chef.
The principal tells Charlie a scary tale of the history behind Halloween, and Charlie starts vomiting violently, and it's this kind of like chocolatey, bloody projectile style.
Which, watching that, I was wondering, like, is this partially a reference to the fact that, like, in like 60s movies, in horror movies before color became such a thing in horror, a lot of the time they would use chocolate syrup because it had the right consistency. And so, like, seeing it in color, I was like, I can't tell if this is supposed to be chocolate or blood. And then I was like, it's both. And maybe that's kind of the point. Yeah.
It was also edible. They made it tasty.
Yum.
So any vomit blood chocolate, it was tasty according to this Twitter account that I found. And then the principal obviously says that famous line of "You should always check your candy," which is great. So good. Then we're introduced to a couple of, they say teens, but I feel like they felt very middle school to me, which I guess could be a teen.
Yeah.
I was not a teen in middle
I
school.
didn't read them as teens.
Yeah. I'm going to say middle schoolers.
Yeah, fine.
I make the choices on this podcast. I'm talking about the film. They're middle schoolers. So there's 3 trick-or-treaters who arrive at the principal's house asking for jack-o'-lanterns for UNICEF, but we all know better than that. And Principal Wilkins then hears his like grumpy neighbor, Mr. Krieg, who's played by Brian Cox, who actually wore the wig and prosthetics that he has on there were made to look like John Carpenter, and that was Brian Cox, the actor, that decided that choice.
That's incredible.
He was like, no, I'm doing this role, and I'm going to be this person. I want to look like John Carpenter, and I want to be a curmudgeon.
What an homage. Yeah. Well, especially because John Carpenter, like, is a curmudgeon.
Fair.
Yeah.
Fair. Touché. Following the trick-or-treaters, they meet up with a friend for more pumpkins and end up at a house with dozens upon dozens of beautifully lit jack-o'-lanterns on the lawn, meeting the 5th trick-or-treater, who is clearly the odd one out. That's Rhonda.
Me.
Who you were same. We are Rhonda. We love Rhonda. And the way this house is decorated is an absolute dream. And according to IMDb, most of the jack-o'-lanterns were made out of either foam or ceramic. An on-set joke was that no pumpkins were harmed in the making of this film.
So kindly.
Yeah. They were saved for kids in Halloween, not to be busted up, which I appreciate.
Since busting up pumpkins is such bad luck,
new band name Dibs, busting up pumpkins. It's a rap group from the 90s.
Amazing. That's our new side project. But like, since that's such a key part of the plot, I kind of like that they were careful about that behind the scenes. They didn't want to bring bad luck upon themselves.
Yes. Yeah, Sam would get them. They were all worried. So Rhonda explains to the kids the kind of origins of Halloween to them. And so she talks about how Samhain, it comes from Samhain, an ancient Celtic festival of the dead, which modern day Halloween is derived from. Actually where Sam gets his name from, because if you spell, spelling of Samhain is S-A-M.
Yeah. That scene was the part where I was like, oh my God, it's me. Because like when I was Rhonda's age, I was so obsessed with like pagan history and like Samhain and all that stuff. And just the way she was talking about it, I was like, I'm having flashbacks to my childhood self.
Just info dumping.
Yeah. Oh my God, yeah.
And everyone's like, cool. And you're like, no, this is really fascinating, guys.
This is my special interest, guys. Yeah.
Bless her. So they find themselves at the site of a tragic event that happened 30 years earlier. And they have a flashback of this school bus scene.
Loved that scene.
Yeah. How did you like seeing that? Did you know that was kind of an element in that?
I didn't. Like, I had watched the trailer beforehand, and there's like a quick shot of the school bus.
Yeah.
But I went to NMSA, which is the New Mexico School for the Arts here in Santa Fe, and took a lot of masks classes because I was a theater kid. And so I'm like really...
Like masks you wear on your face?
Yes,
cool.
Like masks.
I was like, I don't know, masculine energy. It's cool.
I mean, that too. If there were mask classes, MASC, I would absolutely be taking that. But no, we did like half masks and larval masks and like Commedia dell'arte masks. And so I was like just fascinated by the masks that they had in that scene and the construction of them. I thought they were like
so
so evocative and creepy and gorgeous. Like A+ production design on that.
They're really, really iconic
Yeah.
masks. I feel like a lot of references you see outside of this film without knowing it are these masks. And it's not until you watch it where you really like dive in. You're like,
felt
oh,
that.
these kids.
Yeah, I was like, oh, I feel like I've seen things that are referencing this. Yeah.
There's lots of fun little Easter eggs in, and I think that's one of them. So welcome to the club of Trick or Treat.
Thank you for inducting me.
So speaking of the school bus full of kids wearing those vintage Halloween masks, they pass a cemetery filled with overgrown pumpkins. And then we see Sam for the first time, and he's on the side of the road with his little sack. But this scene apparently is an homage to It's the Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown from 1966, because it originally took place in an overgrown cemetery with pumpkins.
That makes sense.
And then you'll also see in the same scene when they're driving down one of the residential streets, there's a 1958 Plymouth Fury from the movie Christine. Kind of parked off to the side, which was a nod to Stephen King and the novel, the Stephen King novel and the John Carpenter movie of the same name. So,
so many Carpenter references. I love it.
I was going to say, digging through all these things and kind of realizing, again, in the horror genre, how much fun directors, writers kind of have with kind of giving like a little like, hey.
Oh my God, yeah.
I see you.
For us super fans out there.
Yeah, and it's fun when you actually note those things yourself. So
you're like, oh,
where's
I'm
that
in
from?
on the joke.
I get it, guys. Love inside jokes. Hope to be a part of one day.
One day. Keep doing the podcast long enough, we'll eventually develop some.
So Sam, for those of you who don't know, Sam looks like a little kid, orange onesie, burlap sack, if you're watching this, the little guy on my lap with little button eyes and a twine mouth, and he carries around his little trick-or-treat sack, which he drags around filled with tricks
Question
and
mark?
treats, presumably. You'll find out.
It looks heavy. I remember thinking that. Like, it looks quite heavy.
Oh, yeah.
That
He's doing a lot of work. He's got a lot of razor blades in there, probably.
That's true. I need a lot of candy to keep up that energy all night.
Hopefully people are giving it to him, too. He's a trick-or-treater. He's been doing this.
That's true. He's got resources.
And then we come to the werewolf transformation scene, which I wish I could have been there when you watched this scene.
I lost it.
Oh, I'm sure.
Fucking lost it.
I'm sure.
Oh my God. The notes I have here, love Anna Paquin checking out the Viking girl earlier in that sequence. I also have a note here that says, it's always the gays who survive. Not sure what that was about, but I know it was from that
you're
scene.
like, I felt it in my core.
Yeah. And then just the skin stripping is amazing.
Yeah, it's so cool.
It's gorgeous. And again, the practical effects of that. That also just like, I feel like you so rarely see female werewolves.
I had that as a note because Ginger Snaps is really the one. And as I was looking, there's like Underworld, there's some other references, but I feel like it's fine.
It's underutilized for sure.
Absolutely.
I think especially because it's like, it's a very mask monster, right? Like a werewolf. So it's interesting seeing that flipped. Like
when you think werewolf, if you ask someone, what do you think? You don't
like
think
big hairy dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So for reference, the first time I ever watched this film, I was over at the person's house that I was dating at the time. And they were like, you have to watch this. We're putting it on. We were kind of a fan of like sharing horror back and forth. I fell asleep midway through, not intentionally, just real tired. Had a couple of adult beverages and woke up to this scene.
Oh my God.
And like time had passed. So I was like,
what is happening?
Is this? I'm like, hello? Is this the same movie? Did it I know it was a DVD, but I was just like, did something else start playing? So I woke up to that scene, which is a reference to the iconic werewolf scene from The Howling from 1981.
Interesting. I hadn't placed that, but it makes perfect sense hearing it.
Yeah. So that whole scene, like you said, is so iconic for so many reasons. Female werewolves, practical effects. I mean, the makeup team once again killed it. It's bloody, it's
Mm-hmm.
visceral.
Mm-hmm.
And then just with that cover of Sweet Dreams.
Oh, the Marilyn Manson version, of course. Which like, hate the person.
Yeah.
Love the cover.
Yeah, gotta
Yeah.
say. Sorry.
Yeah.
The cover's good. And it
And
in
the
that scene,
usage of it, yeah. Oh.
it's kind of woven in. It's kind of soft in the background. You hear these like bones crunching
and then the moments when it comes to the forefront are so well timed. It's good music supervision.
Good job, guys.
Good job.
So after that beautiful scene, that's my favorite scene probably.
Yeah, no, that was definitely like the pinnacle.
It's so good. We end up back at Mr. Krieg's house where something seems to be playing tricks on him. And of course he's pissed.
Mm-hmm.
Of course.
Course.
Loads a shotgun.
Yep.
Of course.
Of course.
Get off my lawn, you know. And he's faced with our little Halloween king, Sam. Who scares the shit out of all of us when he runs across the doorway with that flashing breaking bulb.
Yeah, terrifying.
Every time I'm just like, oh God.
Yeah. No, it was a good jump scare. It was a really good jump scare.
So dude gets his leg slashed. He falls and asks who Sam is, to where Sam peels down his Holly Ho. Oh, I had them on earlier. I had Holly Ho earrings for I just reached for them and they're not here. I have little Sam sucker earrings now, but he reaches for his little candy, pulls it down to reveal a razor blade, which is not only a nod back to you should always check your candy, but we actually see Sam take that candy from Mr. Wilkins earlier in the night.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. What a great detail.
So he wasn't lying.
Aww.
Check your candy. And remember how the actor wanted to look like John Carpenter, Brian Cox? Well, later in this scene, he says the line, "You've got to be effing kidding me," which is a nod to the similar scene in John Carpenter's The Thing from 1982.
Oh my God.
Which is such a good movie.
So good. Have we showed that at the theater?
We have.
Okay. We should talk.
Who decided that?
Yeah.
Me.
Yeah, that tracks. Because I feel like that's also that's a good like Christmas horror movie.
Oh yeah, it's winter. You're cold. You want to get like a little. So Mr. Krieg tries to run away. He falls down the staircase. Candy, razor blades, and you'll notice some of the candy isn't named brand. That's because, according to the Michael Dougherty, the director, real candy companies would not sign off because it was obviously all the candy was featuring razor blades and poison. Yeah. So you're like, we're good. We'll pass. Hard pass.
Yeah.
And then we see a gumball rolling down the stairs, which is a nod to the 1980 film, The Changeling.
Oh,
and it turns out the cameraman working on that sequence, which was like his kind of break in the industry, was the same cameraman that shot this scene.
Oh my gosh.
Isn't that cute?
I love that.
It's so cute. Imagine like a full circle moment of like, oh, I did this then and he gets to have fun with it.
I wonder which came first, whether they hired this guy and then were like, let's do an homage to this scene, or they were like, we're going to do an homage to this scene. Let's hire the guy who shot it.
I don't know. I feel like he might have been like, I got an idea.
Yeah, I got this, guys. Give me a gumball and see what I can do.
Yeah. And I can make movie magic. So after a little scuffle, we finally see the reveal of Sam's face, which is simultaneously the cutest and creepiest jack-o'-lantern skull. He's described, he's described as a little demon who was born in a pumpkin patch, and the director described his head as a cross between an embryo and a pumpkin.
That's really interesting.
And he makes little like coos, and
the noises are really sweet.
What it was? Had you seen his face reveal prior?
No,
what was your reaction
surprise.
to that?
I found it cuter than I expected to, and like not in a bad way, not in like it was still scary, but I like felt like oh, I kind of want to give him a hug. Yeah, like what have they done to you?
He's just trying to embrace Halloween.
Yeah,
he's not just the bad guy.
No, you're definitely on Sam's team as you're watching.
Yeah,
for sure.
I think that's kind of the fun thing about this film for me is there's so many villains in a certain sense, like the traditional sense in this film, and like by all like on paper, Sam should be, but my boy is just like, yo, celebrate Halloween and traditions and have fun.
Yeah,
like damn.
Yeah.
Enjoy some candy and dress up. It's not that hard.
Enjoy some candy and check it first.
Check it first. As Sam's rules as like a little roundup are always hand out candy to trick-or-treaters, always wear a costume, never blow out the jack-o'-lantern before midnight, and always respect the dead, which I think are very good rules, and they're not that hard to follow.
No.
And
it did make me wonder what happens if the wind blows a candle out.
Oh, dang.
Like, what if there's like an act of God in
Make a better
trick-or-treat.
jack-o'-lantern. Do
better.
Fake flames. Fake flames.
LED candles. That's
Look
the
at your
answer.
jack-o'-lantern the entire night and don't take your eyes off. Multiple jack-o'-lanterns. And just to kind of wrap up this, I just feel like it's a really rewatchable movie. I feel like there's so many different little nuggets. You even see like the bus kids in the very beginning. They're trick-or-treating, right? Like very, very, very much in the background. And it's just kind of it's fun horror.
Yeah.
They're just having fun.
Yeah.
A lot of gore. A lot of camp.
Very campy.
And I love the idea of this character that really his whole thing is just like embracing Halloween and how you should too, which is why every Halloween I watch it because I'm like, he's going to show up.
You've got to respect his rules.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that is Trick or Treat.
I loved seeing, there's like one very quick shot. I think it's all I don't know if it's Mr. Creed, but somebody's watching TV and is like flipping channels.
Yeah.
And I had a note here that they showed a piece of one of the movies that I almost put on my list last week. It's one of the made-for-TV Scooby-Doo movies. I think it's Scooby-Doo Zombie Island. They have like a little clip from that. And I was like, my childhood. I got so excited. I also just, I loved how much the lighting scheme of the movie was like very clearly jack-o'-lantern influenced. Like everything has this kind of orange glow to it, this sort of candlelit feeling, which gave it this very kind of warm, cozy atmosphere that you don't normally get in horror. Like normally things have kind of a greener tint or they're like, you know, they're not made to look like friendly in horror usually, and this had like a surprisingly friendly visual atmosphere to it.
Absolutely. It's a nice little glow in the background.
Yeah.
I think if you have the right mood lighting around your apartment and you put that on, it just adds
It's cozy.
extra.
It's a very cozy Halloween movie.
It's a cute little movie. I'm glad you liked it.
Oh my God, I'm so glad you gave me the excuse to watch it. It's one I realized as I was watching it that I had seen just the opening pre-credits sequence on TV one time before, but I hadn't watched the full movie, and I don't know why I didn't because I liked it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was great to see where it takes you.
Yay.
Yeah, and then I was also just like so pleased to see the little razor blade candy connection because I was like keeping an eye out. We decided on Candyman and Trick or Treat just based on like the titles being similar, I think, partially because
like, oh, these make sense.
These make sense together. But again, I hadn't seen Trick or Treat. I didn't know if there were going to be any things in common. But I like begged you to talk about Candyman.
Yeah. You're like, no, this is what I'm doing.
I was like, yeah, nobody else gets to take this from me. Which, like, it's interesting. It's actually a movie that I only saw for the first time last year, I'm pretty sure. Got the DVD from Lisa at Video
Candyman,
Library.
you mean?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. No, it's one that has not been in my life for that long, but it made such an immediate and intense impact on me. Like, oh my God.
Yeah, I would have thought the way you've spoken about Candyman that
you would think that it's something that I've been watching since I was a little kid, right? No, Lisa gave it to me and was just like, I think you would enjoy this. And I watched it and was just like, okay, this changed my life. Which, you know,
shout out to Lisa at Video Library here in Santa Fe, New Mexico. She is
a movie goddess.
Yeah, she's not only just a cool human being, but she owns the oldest video rental store in the United States, the second oldest in the world, and she's owned that business for 40 years.
42 this
42.
Year. Yeah.
And yeah, pay her a visit if you're in town. It's just, I mean, I don't even know how to describe this space. It's so small and so packed, but it's so organized, but like she knows where it's organized.
There's no computer in Video Library. It's all
no
Lisa's
computer.
Head. She has this eidetic memory for film. She can tell you just based on like the most vague description of like, oh, I think I saw this movie. It's from like the 60s. It's black and white. It has this actor in it. It has something to do with this, but I don't know the title. She can tell you off the bat. She can find it in the store. She has all of these rare VHSs and just always the best recommendations.
Yeah.
So she really hit the nail on the head with this one.
Yeah.
And it's one that I'd known I needed to watch for a very long time because it's obviously one of the films that was a big influence for Jordan Peele, who was a huge influence for me in my work. And so I watched it partially because I know it's one that he's cited in interviews as a reference point, but also obviously he produced the 2021 sequel to it, the Nia DaCosta directed.
I still have to see it. Don't tell
I still
anybody.
have to see it too.
I wanted to watch this first because I had watched this in college.
Oh, interesting.
For the first time.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, this was only your second watch?
This was my second watch, and actually the first time I watched it was in college. My roommate showed it to us, and I went to school in Chicago, so I was in, and the housing program was still like up. It got demolished, I know, in 2011, but that's when I left Chicago, so it was still kind of like
so you got to see Cabrini Green in the flesh.
I think so. I don't know if I remember
it.
But
that's
so that was my first time. Don't remember much, and then last night.
Interesting.
So.
What was your reaction rewatching it? Let me start there.
I mean, initially, as soon as the credits started rolling, and it was that music, and then the overhead shots.
It's so gorgeous.
And
the bees.
And the bees. I'm gonna like mispronounce this, and I shouldn't. But it reminded me of Koyaanisqatsi.
Yes. No, you got it. And the filmmaker from that also lives in Santa Fe.
Yes, we love him.
We love him.
I've had the honor of meeting him.
Shout out to Godfrey Reggio, everybody.
We love Godfrey Reggio.
Living treasure.
Yeah, and his new film is coming out with. I've been fortunate enough to see a good chunk of it, and it's so amazing. But that was my first reaction, was like, oh my God, that's what this reminds me of. And I was whoa.
I'm pretty sure it was Philip Glass who did the soundtrack to Koyaanisqatsi too. So you're onto something. Yeah.
We're getting the thumbs up from our producer Warren.
Thanks, Warren.
Siena,
thanks for confirming us.
That makes sense.
And so just to kind of preface this, I have very little summary because I'm assuming that most people who are listening to this have either already seen Candyman or are gonna go see Candyman. I don't want to spoil too much of it, but a lot of what I have are facts about the production and prompts and questions. So like one of the first things that I wanted to talk about with you was the music, partially because apparently Philip Glass was super turned off by how the movie turned out.
Really?
Because he had so Candyman is adapted from the Clive Barker short story The Forbidden, and he, was a fan of Clive Barker, had seen, I can't remember what it was, but there was another Clive Barker adaptation that had come out recently at the time that he was contracted to do the film, and he thought it was going to be this kind of art house, sort of very literary, very almost sort of staid adaptation, and was super upset that it turned out to be very slashery, which is hilarious to me for two reasons. Partially, I just listened to the audio version of The Forbidden on the way to recording today to get ready. And the story is very much like a slasher story. Like it's not as if the base material doesn't have that in it, but also it's such a classic slasher score that he composed. Like it
was really visceral, and again, like the juxtaposition of that kind of music with, I think is initially what I was like, oh damn, I'm in for a ride right now.
That score is so viscerally terrifying, and it's hilarious to me that Philip Glass like kind of is one of those people who looks down his nose at horror a little bit, because it's like, dude, you're great at it.
Yeah.
Like just embrace it. You're wrong. So hot takes, Philip Glass is wrong.
Just on this thing, just to be clear.
But so I'll give sort of the short version of Candyman. Helen and Bernadette are grad students in Chicago. They're studying urban legends, which, God, do I wish that was a department in actual colleges.
Cool.
Oh my God.
They were just a cool friend, like couple of friends.
Oh my God. Yeah. I want to hang out with them, particularly Bernadette.
Yes.
Helen is a piece of work, but Bernadette is such a sweet human being. And I should say, directed by Bernard Rose, starring Virginia Madsen as Helen. She was also in Dune and in Firewalk with Me, which I hadn't remembered.
Oh,
right,
the Twin Peaks movie.
Yeah, the Twin Peaks movie. I had not placed that at all.
That movie, and I love that show.
We should definitely talk about that on a future episode.
Yeah, hit us up on our Instagram at Splice and Splatter Pod if you want us to do that one.
Vanessa Williams, Casey Lemons, who's an amazing director in her own right. She's the one who plays Bernadette. Xander Berkeley, and of course Tony Todd, who... What even is there to say about Tony Todd?
So many things, I think,
so
from
many
you.
Things. I'm gonna try and gather my thoughts together. But Helen and Bernadette, they're studying urban legends, and they encounter the story of a murderer who seems to be basing his own crimes on the legend of Candyman, who is the son of a slave who was murdered via bee swarm by a lynch mob for impregnating a white woman in the late 1800s, early 1900s. And this mob cut off his hand, smeared the stump with honey, and let him get stung to death by the bees that the honey attracted.
Which is a real torture method of like slicing and slathering honey. And there was a method where they would let goats lick it and it would get really infected and they would get sepsis. Sorry. I love torture methods for some reason. So just fun fact.
That feels very Roman. Is that a Roman torture method?
I'm sure it was a lot of places.
Sure, yeah, good. Everywhere that has bees, probably. So that's
poor buddy.
And I'm gonna try not to give away too much of the ending because I do think that it's the sort of thing that you can talk about a lot of what's good about Candyman without getting into the spoilers. So I'm gonna try and do my best. But it's part of what I was so fascinated by, especially listening to the Forbidden on the way over, is the original Clive Barker story is not set in Chicago. It's set in Liverpool around the same time period, but all of the elements of race and racism are not present in the original. That's something that's just in there in the American adaptation. And the original is much more about class conflict, which is still, that's still there. Sweets for the Sweet is a much bigger thing in the original too. That being in the graffiti, which you still see it in this version.
I have a question.
Yes.
The debate.
Yes.
Was that blood, feces, or both?
A little of column A, a little of column B.
Okay, cool.
I think it's supposed to be feces, is what I read it as.
Chunky.
It's pretty chunky. It's they did a lot of texture work on that for sure.
No, the set was great because I could smell it.
Oh yeah. No, especially the first time I watched that scene, it's like it really, talking about the different kinds of horror, that is such gross out horror. And such like visceral disgust, like makes you retch as you're watching it, which just
is great.
It's so good. But I was fascinated by that about the adaptation, and I was reading actually this morning that apparently Bernard Rose, the director, who is a white Jewish man, met with the NAACP about making this film because he was nervous about it, and he was like, I want to get community buy-in, which like good on you, Bernard Rose.
Yeah, especially for 92.
Yeah. That's we need more people doing that now.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the NAACP was just like, why are you worried about this? Like, black actors should get to be Freddy Krueger. They should get to be the villain. And like the idea that that's a problem is kind of silly. But Virginia Madsen, who played Helen, stayed worried throughout the release of the film and kept saying, I think Spike Lee won't like this film. Which like, as somebody who's a big Spike Lee fan, I'm kind of just like, have you been watching any Spike Lee movies?
Yeah,
like,
I feel like this would be something
right
that
up his alley,
do.
Right? So just thought that was fascinating, especially because that's one of the things that really, part of why I love this movie so much and part of why I wanted to talk about it so much is because I think Candyman walked so that movies like Get Out could run in terms of kind of social horror. But honestly, I think that this film is it feels so modern and so fresh that like it really doesn't feel like you're watching something from 31 years ago. It in a lot of ways feels like more politically incisive to me than some of the stuff that's coming out today. And so that just kind of, I'm totally fascinated by that, especially now knowing that that was stuff that was added in by the director that wasn't in the original text. So
I was going to say, like, even kind of speaking to that, and again, because sadly it's still a conversation that we're having today, and these are like issues that, you know, hopefully one day go away, but like the world that we live in right now, they're very apparent. I think there's a lot of films now being made about the same topic, which unfortunately is why it still feels of the time. And even there was a scene where they were walking, Helen and Bernadette were walking down that staircase. And I think it was Helen was like, oh, because I was a white woman in here, like I was let go.
She like calls attention to it.
And I was just like, oh my God, for 1992
for her to say that.
Bold, like just say it and not imply it. I was like, snaps.
Yeah, because it's kind of fascinating, right? Because I feel like even a modern movie, I'm not sure if the character would be that self-aware.
Yeah. It was a great point, and I was like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
like this film fucks.
Yeah, this film fucks. And it's funny because even her saying that, I'm still like, well, yeah, but you're not doing anything about it.
And that's
like
the thing,
she's
too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she's still such a, and this is part of what I love about the film, is like the way it critiques white feminism is just like, it
Yeah.
like rips it to
Oh,
shreds.
yeah, absolutely.
And like again, the relationship between Helen and Bernadette, which Bernadette is not nearly as big a character in the original. She's essentially just the husband's assistant and isn't like friends with Helen in the story, the Clive Barker story.
Oh,
so they made her a much more prominent character for this, which I think was a really smart decision.
Yeah, she's a great character. That actress too. Just immediately you loved her.
Mm-hmm. If any of y'all have not seen Casey Lemon's own film, Eve's Bayou, amazing. Also a great kind of, it's sort of more of like a Southern Gothic than like a straight up horror, but if you're into horror, I think you'd enjoy it. Hard to find, but really good. Let's see. Did you know Virginia Madsen claims that she was hypnotized during some of the filming for this?
Really? When?
I think during most of the scenes where she's with Candyman, where she's interacting with Tony Todd.
Oh.
So the actress playing Helen says that because obviously Candyman has this sort of kind of like sensual
his
mystique.
voice.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Okay, yeah, let's
Talk about
pause
being
and talk
hypnotized,
about
like,
Tony
yeah.
Todd for a second. Let's just get that out there. We're here.
We made it.
Yeah. I mean, part of what I love about Clive Barker in general is just like he makes horror so sexy. Like that's such an important
way to put it.
part of it. I mean, like he's the guy behind Hellraiser too, which is like,
oh yeah,
yeah,
that's actually
it's
fair.
really
Touché.
sexy. And so there's something about the way he combines those two things in his own writing that's just incredible. And the casting of Tony Todd,
Oh my God,
it's
perfect.
I think I might be getting this wrong. Somebody shout us out afterwards if I am, but I believe that they actually considered Eddie Murphy for this role, which would have been a disaster.
Well, at the
in my
time
opinion.
too, I feel like a lot of those comedic actors that we know then have kind of transformed into more dramatic roles nowadays. But then that would have been
wild.
Also, how tall is he? Not Eddie Murphy, but
Tony Todd, I think he's like 6'3".
Oh my God. I mean, that too.
That's actually why they didn't cast Eddie Murphy, is they wanted somebody who was taller.
Yeah.
Which you know from that first moment where we first see Candyman in that parking garage, that empty parking garage. He has that gorgeous coat and
the
turns
coat's
around.
great. Want the coat. But can we talk about for 2 seconds?
Please.
That someone says Helen, and then she goes, "Do I like hello?
Do I
and
know
it's like,
you?
oh my God, like it's a girl. It's a parking garage.
Yeah.
Like if someo's creepily
saying your name in a parking
oh my
garage,
God, who is it? Like,
well, and like just
get
from the
in your
tone
car.
of voice alone. Also,
I
like,
was
girl, you
so
live in
mad.
Chicago. What are you doing? You need
Like,
to be
oh my
more
God,
street
who?
savvy than this.
Me?
Which like also, oh my God. Speaking of Helen's idiocy,
It's a whole other podcast.
it's a whole other podcast. But I love the kind of lack of self-awareness she has as she's going up to people in Cabrini Green and being like, here's my business card. I'm not with the cops. And it's like,
yeah, it was brutal.
girl, you think
no one
that
cares?
people care?
Yeah.
Nobody cares about
Hey,
your
fellow
thesis
peeps,
project.
I am not a cop. I'm just a white savior.
Girl, you have never
In a
seemed
nice
more
outfit.
like a cop in your life. Like
She gave cop.
She's given cop. She's given cop big time.
She's giving gentrification.
Yeah, she's giving police violence.
Yeah. Sorry, Helen.
Well,
Actually,
how do we feel about Helen? That's a whole other conversation. But which I think is part of why Virginia Madsen's performance is so brilliant, is that she's able to make Helen hateable in a way that's still fun and in a way that's still, I think you can still see a bit of yourself in there.
She's still likable, which I hated.
Yeah.
I was like, like I felt bad for her.
She's
but I
still
was like, but you
she's
caused this.
charismatic at the same time. Yeah. But 2 things. One, apparently they did actually film several of the exterior and hallway scenes at Cabrini Green. And the film crew, allegedly at least, had to kind of make deals with some of the local gang members to kind of keep the crew protected during the time that they were shooting there.
Yeah.
Which I think that, you almost feel a little bit of that in some of those scenes, particularly like the hallway shots at Cabrini Green.
Mm-hmm.
The sense of desertion in those hallways and like how clearly abandoned that space is, it just like even as great as the production design on the rest of the movie is, you can so feel that that is real.
Yeah, the energy is there.
It's there.
Sure.
It's so there. But just wanted to share that little tidbit before we dive back into Tony Todd.
Yeah, sorry.
No. This is the problem with me talking about Candyman is I'm like, and there's this, and there's this, and there's this. There's so many fascinating facts behind how this film got made. But yeah, they cast Tony Todd partially because of his height, so that there was that kind of elegance to the way he emerges. And I think there's also like there's something a little bit femmy to me about the way he moves and the way he's costumed. He has this like kind of like sort of like delicate swagger to him
absolutely.
That's like just incredibly charismatic. And Tony Todd and Virginia Madsen actually both had live bees in their mouth for the bee scene.
I love this fact, by the way. It's so fun to watch it knowing that.
I know. Do you know how they prevented bees from flying down Tony Todd's throat?
Okay, so I was wondering how they got them like out of their mouths, but I don't know how they
kept them from going in too deep. Dental dams.
Oh,
dental dams.
Simple, effective.
Yeah.
If you want to keep bees out of your throat.
The many purposes of dental dams.
That's smart. But I was wondering how they got them out because I was like, do they just go?
No, and apparently they actually had to specifically breed these bees for this movie to get bees that would they're babies, so that they're not as baby bees, so they're not as likely to sting. But they had to breed bees that as babies would look more like adult bees, so that you're not watching it and you're like, oh, they're just babies. So
they put a lot of effort into effort. I mean, it works.
It pays off.
Yeah,
for
it pays
sure.
off definitely. But wow, I didn't realize they bred bees.
And apparently they had to be like right around 9 hours old at the time.
No,
like it was very
that's so
specific.
Cute.
I know, 9-hour-old bees, fresh baby bees,
fresh bees,
fresh baby bees.
What a cool element to that
film. Yeah, Tony Todd thoughts.
I just again initially seeing him in that parking garage. Because I remember like moments of it, but just that initial pullback. I mean, you can even his presence back like that. Without even really seeing his face, it's just kind of the silhouette. Yeah. I'm just like, you're like, whoa.
Yeah.
Candyman.
Yeah, Candyman. No, truly. And then like the way he says, be my victim.
Oh my gosh. I was going to say one of the lines, I'm getting out my notes here really quick. I love that you did notes. My one note that I wrote, and I think it's in that scene too, is Helen goes, do I know you? I don't know. Oh, maybe it's later.
Oh yeah, no, this is the same scene.
Okay. Yeah. Do I know you? And he says, no, but you doubted me. Ugh.
And that actually is taken directly from the Clive Barker story. That dialogue, there are a couple of pieces that they lifted directly from the story.
So good. That was the one to keep because he said that and I was like, oh, I'm writing this down.
That and the like, so I was obliged to come. That's also from the original. And all the like, I came for you. Like it just...
all this sexy stuff.
Yeah, they know what they're doing.
They were
with
like,
all
we
the
got
innuendo.
this.
Yeah, and like Tony Todd sells the hell out of it too.
His voice kind of being that 360 in this space too, where it's so layered.
It's everywhere. Yeah, it's not directional. It's like Candyman is the space, which is a lot to me of kind of like the center. In addition to kind of the political elements and the sexiness of it, another like key aspect of why I love this movie so much is the way it ties horror to place, which is something that I talked about a little bit in our first episode, but like the way that Cabrini Green has like a living, breathing presence in this film and is treated with so much kind of almost reverence, and it feels like Tony Todd himself is sort of becoming this embodiment of Cabrini Green. That to me is like so powerful, especially as somebody who like writes and makes horror movies that are about like the place that I grew up and are very like about place. That idea of like what is the horror that is specific to this particular urban environment, this part of Chicago, this particular piece of history is just like so incredible to me.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite things with horror pieces like this, where it's it's another character in the film, because we all have that one memory of like, I mean, we all have like a basement story where it's like that one specific basement had a specific personality that had a specific like vibe to it, and it was all like, we all have like they all had different energies. So yeah, it was really cool. Those sets were great.
Yeah. Oh my god,
So good.
I just love the painting job on Candyman's mural
on the face. The murals are amazing. Her stepping out of the mouth. I like could watch that scene on repeat.
Oh yeah,
I was like, rewind.
Honestly, like hands down, one of my favorite shots in cinema history.
That's great.
Period. It's in the lookbook for my new film. It's yeah, I'm that obsessed with it. So essential. So essential. I'm just like reading through a couple of my notes here. It was hilarious to me on rewatching. I noticed that when Helen first comes to Cabrini Green, she literally drives her car onto the lawn and parks on the middle of the Cabrini Green lawn, which yeah, completely tracks for her character. There were like a couple little things like that I noticed on rewatching, like when they go into the bathroom together for the first time, when Helen and Bernadette are trying to figure out how to get the mirror off the wall. Bernadette takes Helen's coat when Helen's looking the other way and puts it on the disgusting bathtub so that she doesn't have to sit on it, and gets Helen's coat gross instead, which like love that for Bernadette. That scene also apparently, because the whole subplot of Cabrini Green, these murders happening because people can get through the bathrooms having the mirrors back to back. This was something that's not only not in the Clive Barker original, it's something that, according to the filmmakers, they did not know at the time that they added that into the script, that there was a real series of murders happening that way in Chicago.
No.
Yeah, where
Oopsies.
there was a murderer, where like there were these terribly designed apartment buildings where the bathroom mirrors backed up against each other, and if you lifted the cabinet out, you could go into the other apartment, and there was an actual murderer who was breaking into apartments like that. Yeah.
So check your candy, check your mirrors.
Check your candy, check your mirrors. Lessons we've learned for the day.
Gnarly though. That's scary.
Right? It's so fascinating. I have a question for you.
Yes. Might have an answer.
How much do you trust Helen as a narrator? This is something I thought about this a lot on my first watch, but like especially as I've revisited it more and more, like how much do you think that because basically the whole movie is through Helen's eyes, right?
Yeah. No.
And like how much of it is true? Like how much can we trust Helen?
Right. Ooh, I don't know, because I can't say I trust her.
Like as a person, I don't trust her.
That's a great question. Do you know if like the filmmakers had, I don't know if
I haven't found anything of them talking about this, and the story I think does much less to make you doubt Helen.
Okay.
Whereas the film, I feel like, particularly because in the story there's not this kind of like, okay, how do I say this without giving too much away? In the movie, it is not 100% clear what violence is being committed by Candyman versus by Helen.
Well, that was kind of a question watching through too, because she like claims like she
doesn't remember anything,
or like she's not a murderer or whatever,
and we don't see her do anything.
Well, there was an instance. Yeah. There was one instance where like she did that one.
She did that. Which one was that for you?
The through the window. Oops.
Oh, yeah.
So through the window.
Yeah.
And I was like, that was you.
That's
you.
on you.
Yeah. But again, I think it comes to like the class and the race question too, of like white women tears and like white women innocence in this space. And it's just like, how much are white women in society and that type of white woman in society reliable?
Right.
So I think that's kind of, and it's scary that, how old is this? Like 30 years old?
31.
31 years old, and it's like we're still having that conversation. It's still, like you said, very reflective of the times that we're still in now. So yeah, I don't know, I might have to watch it again with that lens.
Well,
which
because
is a
like
really cool
my
thing.
note here, I said, I don't fully believe the interaction with the detective where Helen is set up as a white savior, although not because of the need for a white person to testify. Like, it makes sense that the cops would be like waiting for some white lady to get hurt so that they can like scoop that up.
Right.
But the idea that this Black Chicago cop is like genuinely interacting with Helen as like, thank you so much for coming forward with your story. You're the one who's going to bring this guy to justice.
Yeah.
That scene, that was the one on this rewatch where I was like, I don't feel like this cop would be that like effusively grateful in real life.
Sarcasm, perhaps?
Sarcasm,
'Cause
perhaps.
later, doesn't he?
Yeah,
He's like, cut the crap.
yeah,
Helen."
it's true. But like, I was watching that and I was like, is this the way this interaction is actually happening, or are we reading
she
this
thought
as
that.
she's seeing this Black officer
Yeah.
as looking up to her,
Like, "Oh my
as
God, I'm
like
doing such a
praising
good
her? You're
job."
doing such a good job, and like that's not actually how this
Oh,
interaction
wow.
played
I have
out.
to watch this again
So-
now because of that, with that lens.
Yeah, so there's like a lot of different ways to read it, which is part of what I love about it. It's like
So
you can you can view it so many different ways, and you can see it as just a straight up supernatural tale. Candyman's committing all the murders.
Yeah.
You can see it as just a straight up realist tale where
Yeah.
she's committing all the murders. You can see it as a mix of the two, and
Mhm.
like all of them mean different things, and that's just fascinating to me.
Yeah, that's really
Um,
cool. It was a really, again, from not remembering much, the first time I saw it and then watching it again, uh, it was again that mix of the music. I wasn't expecting all those themes throughout because I really didn't. I didn't
mhm.
watch a trailer. I didn't really look
Yeah,
anything up.
love that.
Yeah, I went in cold, and yeah, I was. Although I felt like there were like 10 false endings. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, it's done. Oh wait,
Yeah.
no. Okay, it's like
Oh,
done.
that's so
Oh wait, no, no.
interesting. Yeah.
So I don't know if that's just me.
When did you think, what were the false endings for you?
I think I hit about 6. I think I thought there were 6 false end, but I loved everything that came after because I was
yeah.
like, okay, I need to chill, and I was like,
Yeah.
no, I'm pretty sure this is the end now. I was like, oh, just kidding.
And then it just keeps going.
Little treats.
We need to talk about the dog head for a second. Because, like, speaking of
Oh,
practical decapitations, which,
yeah.
like, great ones in Trick or Treat, great practical decapitation effect in this.
Lots of
Just,
fun,
ugh.
bloody,
ugh.
bloods.
Lots of fun bloody blood. Interestingly, dogs are a much bigger part of the Clive Barker original, and so it was
That actually makes
yeah,
sense.
Yeah,
Doesn't he kind of bring in animal elements
he
too?
does,
Yeah.
and it kind of feels it feels like maybe the dogs had a bigger part in the original movie, and like maybe things were cut. I don't
Mhm.
know, but like we see so much of Anne Marie's like big scary dog kind of barking at the windows, and then it doesn't come back up again. So I'm
Right.
curious if there was like
Some
a
more.
scene there that got deleted, because in the original, what draws Helen back into the room instead of um, what happens in the movie, which I won't give away, but in the story, she goes back in because she sees that there's a rabid dog trapped in the apartment, and she's scared
Ah.
that it's gonna like break out and torment people.
Yeah.
And so she's like, I have to let it out, and she's like clearly kind of not functioning at full cognitive capacity maybe, but she's like, I have to break the dog out so that the dog
Yeah.
doesn't break out itself, and that's what leads her in.
Mm.
So it's interesting to me that instead of a dog, it's a baby, which babies
Yeah.
are also like a very big thing in Candyman.
Yeah,
And
it was.
it's
Babies.
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 Yeah.
That was a horror
We're-
element
yeah.
for me.
Oh yeah, that's unintentional horror. That I don't think either of us are supposed to find that as horrifying as
Yeah.
we do, but it sure is. One exquisite kiss, that Tony Todd line, I just
Wait. Oh,
Mhm.
yes.
that whole kind of like, I want to call it almost like Bride of Candyman
Oh,
scenes,
yeah.
like like
love that.
his little church and
Mhm.
the candlelight that he's laid out for her, like it's so
Oh,
romantic.
the way he picked her up.
Oh my
too.
God, yeah. Which
Yeah.
again, thank God they cast Tony Todd, because the height is so important
Oh,
for
she
that
looks
shot.
so
She looks
small,
like
and
a
it really,
doll.
and that's, I think, again, another layer probably of like you know, having this big man that's like, oh, is he the one really in control? Because he like has this statuesque, strong build versus this like, oh, I'm a little frail white woman, and it's just like that juxtaposition being played with. But it's like, yeah, going back to your point of, you know, who to trust.
Who do we
like
trust?
I trust him way more than I trust her.
Yeah,
He was
totally.
like, yo, just come on.
Yeah. Well, and, like, I love his whole speech about, like, why would you want to be alive when you could live in legend?
I know.
That it's so eloquent, and the way Tony Todd delivers it, it's like, yeah, I'll be your victim.
Well, again,
like,
I kind of, while watching it, was like, oh my God, this reminds me of like Hellraiser right now.
yeah, totally. Which, yeah, again, Hellbound Heart. It was, Clive Barker.
So funny.
Man knows how to combine.
I was right.
You were right. You're always right, my dear.
Not always, but it's a good guess.
Yeah. Well, but that kind of brings me back to the idea of Virginia Madsen saying that she was hypnotized for some of those scenes, which, like,
interesting.
It's fascinating because, like, watching back over it, I didn't know that when I first watched it. I knew it for this rewatch, and knowing that, I feel like you can tell which scenes she's saying she's hypnotized in, because there's these ones where she gets this like glassy look in her eyes. But I'm so curious about that. Partially just like as a filmmaker, like, what are the ethics of that? Like, did the actor decide to get hypnotized? Was the director like, you've got to get hypnotized for this?
Did
Virginia
anyone
Madsen?
know that? You know what I mean? Did anyone know right after filming, during filming, or was this like something that came out later?
Did Tony Todd know?
Yeah.
Like, I'm so fascinated by that, especially because I feel like that's the sort of thing that happened a lot in the 90s that's like less accepted in filmmaking today, is that kind of like actor manipulation.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, you know, I'm glad that that's less accepted today. But Virginia Madsen, at least from what I've seen, doesn't seem like, she seems very cool with the fact that she was supposedly hypnotized.
So it was like
for this.
I was hypnotized.
Yeah.
Wink.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's very much the vibe. Yeah, which, like,
same.
You know?
So funny.
Whatever gets that performance, man, because she, I think,
She's
really
great.
And again, like, it's always hard playing unsympathetic characters or characters that do unsympathetic things. And I think she does a really
you're really
great
fighting for
job.
her to, like, come on, Helen, the whole time.
Yeah, you're like, come on. We're rooting for you. Why do you keep making these terrible decisions?
Absolutely.
Kind of another question off of that, sort of related to the idea of how much do we trust Helen. Do you think she's capable of murdering Bernadette?
I mean, kind of going through her whole story, I think she was capable of doing anything at that point. Yeah. So yeah, I think she was. Her shit was. She was going
gone.
through.
Through it, yeah.
And she threw out some little hatchet things where I was like, you didn't need to do that.
Yeah.
Like, you had control of your arm. You could have just held back for a second. So I do think, even as she fumbled, I think that's her whole thing. Like, she kind of was fumbling and she was like, what the hell is going on? So I think within that world, within like her mental state, absolutely.
That's like, it's validating to hear that, because especially this rewatch, that was the scene where I was like, I think she's murdering her.
Yeah.
Like, that was the first one that I was like, this feels like the one, like, I don't think Helen really has a cause to murder Anne-Marie at Cabrini Green. You know, that one to me feels more like this horror moment of like waking up into this bloody nightmare. But to me, the moment where Bernadette comes to the apartment while Helen is, you know, having this moment with Candyman and then Bernadette dies, I just was like, I feel like out of all the characters in this movie that die, Bernadette is the one that Helen has the most motive for, because we've seen that she's incredibly jealous and protective of her thesis work, and she sees Bernadette as kind of an antagonist, and she keeps trying to pull her back to reality, pull her away from these dangerous situations, make her aware of the way her whiteness is affecting how she moves in these spaces. And like, there's this part of me that was like, is this like the white woman's anger at the woman of color holding her back in quotations coming out in this moment? And like, it gave it like this much darker, grosser feeling to me.
Absolutely.
I also, this is just something that I was thinking about on this most recent rewatch. I was like, who's feeding the baby during that month that it spends
I was
in the
thinking
attic?
that too, and not even that I have that motherly instinct, but I was like, how long has this dude been chilling here? Like, just crying away?
Right?
Is he cold? I don't know.
Presumably.
Like dang.
It's
is Candyman just like tucking him in at night?
And so I was thinking about
because he carries it very gently. So it's like, oh.
Yeah.
And then I said, I started singing The Labyrinth. You remind me of the Babe.
Oh my God.
I was like, he's going to come snatch him up and take him back to the labyrinth.
Literally.
David Bowie's coming.
Oh my God. But so I like developed a little headcanon for that on this rewatch that I wanted to run by you. I was thinking about like, well, honey is one of the only substances that like a human being can live on honey alone.
Oh,
like
good to know.
It's this weird, it's this weird thing where like it's one of the few foods that has all of the nutrients that you need to survive off of. So I'm like, maybe Candyman and his bees are just taking care of this kid. It's the new.
I think he was taking care of him.
Yeah, the new nuclear family, Candyman and his bees. I support it. I also just have a New Mexican note saying that the ending is very Zozobra, like this idea. Yeah. So folks who aren't in Santa Fe, we have a tradition here where we burn a giant effigy of a man at the start of September.
Google it, because when I moved here, I was like, what?
It's weird. It's
cool.
Weird and it's complicated, and a lot of people have very different feelings about it. But like the idea is that he is Old Man Gloom, and you put pieces of paper with the things that are glooming you up bringing you down. You stuff his figure with that, and then the whole town burns him. And so this kind of,
and he screams in agony. He has a voice,
which again, very very Candyman. But so that just like it hits a little bit different as a New Mexican, which I enjoyed. I also just Trevor's the real villain of this, right? Can we all agree?
Oh, the boyfriend?
That? Yeah.
Oh, I mean, like, honey, the girls he was pulling with that hairline, with that attitude. Mm-hmm. Also, just aside, the new girlfriend, his like, when she is like, want dinner, and then she goes into the kitchen and throws a
like
plate of the meat, but she throws an unwrapped raw like steak, and just throws it. And I was like, that was in the fridge. Like, I'm now in my 30s. I'm like, that was in the fridge like that. Like, you could get sick. And she throws it, and she's like 19, so of course she doesn't know. But she throws it on there, and then she's just like taking the pieces and throwing it. I was like, honestly, girl, be mad at him right now. He was
me too.
Awful.
He's awful.
Yeah, he's brutal.
Yeah, which that is also very consistent with the book, and I kind of just love that as a recurring Clive Barker theme of he has so much sympathy to his female characters and often so little sympathy to the men that aren't monsters, which like love.
Good. Yes. He was hateable from start to finish. Loved to hate him. So good on the actor.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was like, get this guy off of here.
Oh, yeah, great at playing.
Come on, I was like, Candyman. Just like, come get him, please.
Yeah. And then my last note, at the very end, right before the credits start, we're or I guess kind of during the credits, we're seeing the murals that Candyman has painted, kind of telling his story, which kind of ties into Trick or Treat too, I guess. There's another like narrating the story through that. And there's a split in the wall over Helen's head.
Oh, I loved that.
I thought that was so interesting.
It was cool.
Yeah, and it just felt like this, for that to be kind of like the final image that the film leaves you with, it very much had this sort of implication to me of, again, like, don't necessarily trust Helen's point of view. Like, there's this like, there's this literal split over her head. There's this sense of like, there may be something going on.
Yeah. Or even just like I saw it as too, which actually goes to your point, is that there's still Candyman's, like, he's still there too.
He's still there.
He can still like come out at any moment. So
there's like an opening.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Which is like a very, again,
I love that.
Clive Barker sexual horror type of thing. Yeah. Totally.
Yeah. Loved it.
Love.
Good pick. Because I enjoyed rewatching it.
I'm so glad. Again, I like could talk the gospel of Candyman for literal hours. This is the most condensed version I could possibly do, and it was really not condensed. But yeah, thank you for indulging. Thank you for being my victim.
Oh, you're so welcome. Anytime.
I love this movie so much.
It's great. I want to watch it again with that lens that it's such a great question with a lot of films that we watch, especially with horror and stuff. Like,
how much can you trust it? Yeah.
It's a great way to watch. So.
I'd love to get Twig's take on that too.
Oh yeah, Twigathy.
Twig is our coworker who runs the bookshop Beastly Books, so he, I'm sure, has Clive Barker feelings.
Yes, more horror input. So with that, just want to say thanks for listening to this episode.
Our first full fat episode.
It's all grown up.
It's all grown up. It grew up so fast.
It's walking now. So thank you for listening. For those of you who aren't again watching on our Patreon, we're making a little Sam's dance. So again, thank you for listening to Splice and Splatter podcast with us today. I think we know our next.
I think we do know our next. Are we going to announce it? Yeah.
You go first.
Wait, what are we doing? You said that and I blanked out. I know what yours is. What is it? Oh yeah. Oh okay. I remembered. We got there eventually. Okay. So I think I'm going to be I'm talking about The Exorcist.
Yes, you are. And I am talking about Scream.
Yeah, which we're showing both of those here in Santa Fe at the Jean Cocteau Cinema. As part of our Halloween extravaganza.
Yeah, and if you haven't seen them, definitely try and watch them before you listen to the next episode. I think we'll probably have some spoilers in there. Those are two films we can talk a lot about too. So,
and I don't know how to talk about The Exorcist without spoilers.
So thank you all for listening. You can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at Splice and Splatter Pod. Stay in touch with us and see what we're up to. Give us film suggestions. Hang out.
Yeah. And the podcast is a High Garden Entertainment production presented by the Jean Cocteau Cinema, which is owned by our beloved author George R.R. Martin here in Santa Fe. And you can find out more about the theater at jeancocteaucinema.com or on Instagram at Jean Cocteau Cinema. And
And thanks for listening.
Thank you guys.
No, we got to give a special thanks.
Oh no.
Sorry. For the people helping make this happen for
That's
us.
Embarrassing.
We have our lovely producer, Warren Langford, who is hiding behind a sound wall now.
We appreciate you hiding and making us less nervous.
And we also have the man behind the camera, if you're watching this, Travis Fowler. So thank you both so much for helping us. And with that, see you later.
See you later, creeps. Bye.
Bye.